I will be talking about the Roma people from Europe. The first article, Romanian Roma, an institutional ethnography of labor market exclusion by Jane Paulson Bremo and Lorena Elena Baciu. This article is taking a look at the structural barriers that make it difficult for Roma individuals to enter the workforce. On page 116, the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights and United Nations Development Program stated that 8 out of 10 Roma are at risk for poverty and that their income is below 60% of the national median income. There are three factors that make it difficult for the Roma individuals to enter the workforce. The first is absence from vocational service institutions, second is formal requirements, and third is a lack of trust between Roma individuals and individuals of institutions. From Conformity and Conflict Reading in Cultural Anthropology by David W. McCurdy, Diana Shandy, and James Bradley, I'm going to connect this article to Chapter 20, Negotiating Work and Family in America, by Diana Shandy and Corinne Moe. The Roma people have a huge issue with mistrust and lack the educational needs to acquire a job, which therefore makes them look inferior. Their country's resources are simply unreliable. However, with Americans, the education system is actually opposite. We find that women are becoming more and more powerful in the workforce. Women are at least as well educated as men, page 183. But from the two articles, individuals in both countries, women in America and most unemployed Roma individuals, are ultimately inferior and are placed into this type of stereotype, making it known that women shouldn't work and be stay-at-home moms, while Roma individuals are considered unwilling to work, page 123. For Article 2, Roma Communities, Urban Development, and Social Bordering in the Inner City of Budapest by Christina Caratzelli, James W. Scott, and Tundal Verog, the goal of this article was to look at the process of everyday bordering as a form of placemaking and how they both involve and impact Roma communities of Budapest. What they found was that there were new forms of exclusion in the area which contraindicated the EU's goals of promoting social cohesion and tolerance. This has created new borders in the area, making physical borders between the rehabilitated areas and steady shrinking slum ghetto areas, social borders between old and new inhabitants, between good and desirable, along with Roma and non-Roma. I will be connecting this to Chapter 11, Forest Development, The Indian Way, by Richard K. Reed. In the Roma Communities article, there is a big emphasis on exclusion due to bordering. Under a racial term section, racism has greatly increased since the mid-2000s. Solidarity with vulnerable social ethnic groups has weakened, according to Social Protection, Welfare, Labor, and Later Education Policies by Virda and Fox 2014. This has caused a shift in their social identity. When connecting to Chapter 11, on page 103, the forests disappeared along with the power to symbolize the Guarani Indian identity, since they were seen as people of the forest. The issues that the Indians faced with their land is that it was given up for economic development, forcing them to find a new identity and leave the comfort of community and culture. For Article 3, Health Endangering Everyday Settings and Practices in the Rural Segregated Roma Settlement in Slovakia, a descriptive summary from an exploratory longitudinal study by Andrej Balak, this article takes a look at the social root causes of poor health in segregated Roma communities. They found that of all the settlements, Roma residents faced a wide range of health-endangering settings and practices. The first was from material circumstances, which included internal housing conditions, a lack of household infrastructure, and a lack of amenities. Second, psychosocial factors, from longer periods of stress and social economic position. Third, health-related behaviors, from smoking and alcohol consumption. And fourth, healthcare utilization, from affordability, which was a major difficulty for low-income families, while higher-income families had more access to healthcare. How residents engaged with in some of these exposures and how these exposures affected residents' health varied according to local social stratification. Connecting this article to Chapter 38 from our book, Public Interest Ethnography, Women's Prisons and Healthcare in California, by Rachel Stryker, in the Health Endangering article on page 6, sanitation and the standard of living for Roma settlements was very poor. Unhealthy household climates, frequent electricity outages, lack of personal hygiene means the presence of parasites, lice, fleas, and frequent intestinal infections, contaminated public space by urine, feces, and smoke, presence of rodents. This connects to Chapter 38 because women's prison sanitation was poorly lacking, leading them to a poor health trajectory while incarcerated. On page 368, it states that 8 women roomed together at once, and while each are happy to clean up after themselves, the prison did not provide an appropriate or adequate amount of cleaning supplies. For Article 4, Creating Context, Ethnography, and Local Concept, both A Man and a Woman in the Roma Community in Skopje by Ines Risteska. This article is looking at the characteristics of Roma individuals born as male and feeling as woman or both male/female. They found that Roma born as male but which feels as girl/woman and wants to have a partner in sexual relations with men and build such relationships in a way that make them feel feminine. Page 11. These transgender males confirm and support their personal sexuality by means of economic exchange for satisfaction. Connecting this to Chapter 3 from our book Fieldwork, A Prostitution on Era of AIDS by Clary Stirk, in the local concept of both a man and a woman article on page 154, Rasteska began to interview people and afterwards they expected a reward. S warned me that when I work with people from the Roma community, especially MSM, and those that work as sex workers, I have to count on rewarding them. Rasteska was unaware that they were sex workers trying to earn a profit, and it relates to Chapter 3 because it opened doors to mistrust/trust. Being able to develop a relationship with the women in Chapter 3 is the same as developing a relationship with the men in the article. Rasteska would have to pay them for their time answering his questions during his study. For Article 5, Genetic Structure of the Paternal Lineage of the Roma People by Horloma Pamjov, this article was meant to figure out the genetic structure of Roma. With much scientific research pulling from the Y chromosomal variations of several Roma groups, of the 41 populations, all Roma groups were associated with Balkan and Anatolian populations, which could have provided an important genetic link between Middle East, Asia, and Africa. I connected this to Chapter 8, The Hunter's Scarce Resources in the Kalahari, by Richard Borchet-Lee. I'm comparing this article to Chapter 8 because in the article it is much about the genetic history of the Roma. However, the Roma people traveled and migrated. 8 to 10 million Roma live in Europe today, with the largest number concentrated in Central and Southeastern Europe. Fraser, 1992. The Roma expanded to the Carpathian Basin in two large waves. The Carpathian Roma arrived in the 15th-16th centuries speaking Hungarian, while the Vlach Roma arrived in the 19th century speaking Hungarian and Romanian languages. In Chapter 8, the Kung Bushmen lived a lifestyle of travel and migration, migrating to waterholes and other campsites 5 to 6 times a year.